A strange thing happens in organizations that appear to be well led. Nothing looks wrong on the surface, meetings are structured, strategy is clear, leaders communicate frequently, updates are consistent, expectations are reinforced, and yet execution drifts. Not dramatically, not rebelliously, but quietly, systematically, almost imperceptibly. Leaders usually assume the problem is a misunderstanding. It really is. More often, the problem is something far more subtle. Your team is not confused by what you said. They are overwhelmed by what they think you meant beyond what you said. This is the leadership blind spot of over signaling. Welcome. You're watching The Leadership Factory. The Leadership Factory is a space where we explore practical, research-driven insights that help leaders think clearly, lead wisely, and build healthier organizations. Today, we are diving into a powerful leadership reality many people don't talk about. How leaders accidentally train teams to overthink everything. You see, we tend to think leadership failure comes from a lack of communication. In reality, modern leadership failure often comes from excessive interpretation pressure. Leaders say enough but signal too much. Tone becomes data. Offhand comments becomes policy clues. Mood shifts become strategic signals. Even silence becomes information. Over time, the organization stops responding to decisions and starts responding to decoding the leader. And once that happens, execution becomes secondary to interpretation management. This is where performance quietly deteriorates on the part of the team. Not because people are incapable, but because they are cognitively overloaded by trying to read leadership correctly. You are no longer leading work. You are being analyzed as a system. And here is the uncomfortable truth. People don't follow your strategy. They follow your behavioral patterns. Most leaders believe alignment is achieved through clarity of direction. But teams rarely execute based on strategy documents alone. They execute based on perceived leader patterns. What gets praised? What gets corrected? What gets ignored? What gets repeated? What gets emotionally rewarded? This is why two teams or two organizations can hear the same strategy and produce entirely different behaviors. One is executing the plan, and the other is executing the leader's psychology. And here is the hidden cost of this problem. The more intelligent and emotionally perceptive your team is, the more they will overinterpret you. High performance teams are especially vulnerable to this problem. They don't just hear instructions, they study the subtext. They infer intent. They model expectations not from what is stated, but from what is felt, which means the leader unintentionally becomes a source of signal noise. And here is the core problem. Leadership has become too interpretable. Hence, in high-functioning teams, ambiguity is not always in the message. It is in the excess meaning assigned to the messenger, you, the leader. For example, a leader says, we need to be more strategic. The team hears operational work is now less valued. A leader says, let's move faster. The team hears careful thinking is now a liability. Or a leader says, I trust your judgment. But the team hears, but I will reassess your decision later. None of this was explicitly communicated by the leader, but it is consistently inferred by the team members. And this is how organizations become psychologically noisy while appearing structurally clear. And here is the counterintuitive insight. Too much leadership presence creates cognitive inflation. Most leadership thinking assumes that more presence equals more alignment. But there's a threshold where presence stops creating clarity and starts creating interpretation inflation. At that point, people stop asking, "What should I do?" And they start asking, "What would you expect me to do in this situation?" That shift is catastrophic for operational independence, because now every decision requires invisible consultation, even when the leader is not in the room, especially when the leader is not within eyesight. So, the real failure isn't miscommunication, it is over-attunement. We often celebrate teams that are highly attuned to leadership, but over-attunement is not alignment. It is dependency on psychological forecasting. It creates teams that are excellent at reading leadership intent, poor at making autonomous judgments, fast in execution, but slow in conviction, confident in delivery, uncertain in ownership. They don't lack skill. They lack insulation from leadership interpretation. You see, the traditional leadership model says communicate more, clarify more, reinforce more. But modern organizational reality demands a different discipline. A discipline that reduces interpretive load. That means your job is no longer to add meaning. It is to prevent unnecessary meaning making. This is a profound shift in leadership identity. You are not a broadcaster as a leader. You are a filter against over-analysis. Over-analysis leading to paralysis. Now, let's explore 3 practical recalibration process you must explore. Meaning, 3 leadership moves that reduces over-interpretation from your team. Number 1, separate instruction from the implication. Stop embedding strategic meaning into every operational comment. Not everything is directional. Some things are just operational. Treat them that way. Number 2, stabilize your reactions. Your team is constantly updating their internal model of what matters based on your emotional response. If everything is met with intensity, everything becomes high stakes, even when it isn't. 3, eliminate interpretive ambiguity signals. These are statements like, "We will see. Let's revisit this issue later." Oh, interesting approach. You see, those comments are not neutral. They are not neutral in high achievement teams. They are decoded as hidden evaluation. And as a leader, I want you to reflect on the following questions for you to understand how it is. What decisions in your organizations are not actually complex, but they are being analyzed because of perceived leadership expectation? Where are your team members asking approval for? Or what are they asking? Not because they need it, but because they are trying to decode you. If you were removed from daily visibility of leadership, which parts of execution would immediately simplify and which would collapse under interpretive uncertainty? As you reflect on those questions, here's my closing thoughts and closing insight. The most advanced stage of leadership is not influence amplification, it is interpretive reduction. When people stop trying to read between your lines, they start building on top of your decisions. And that is when leadership finally becomes scalable. For the next week, do something deliberately countercultural. Remove one layer of meaning from every message you send. Speak less in implications. React less as signal. Clarify only what is necessary for action, not interpretation. Then observe what happens when your team is no longer trying to decode you, but simply working with you. Because the goal of leadership is not to be understood perfectly. It is to stop needing to be interpreted at all. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now, remember, leadership is not just about making decisions. It is about creating an environment where truth can be heard, trust can grow, and people can thrive. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your reflections. You can connect with me at contactme@toyeshubande.com. And I want you to stay tuned, because in our next episode, we will continue exploring the deeper human realities that shape leadership effectiveness. Until then, keep leading with clarity, courage, and wisdom. Thank you. Bye-bye.